Some creatures become monsters only after the world forgets they were ever worth saving. The first stone landed beside the chained beast and rolled into the wet leaves. No one flinched. No one looked away. To the people gathered at the edge of Black Hollow Forest, this had become a familiar evening ritual. They came carrying lanterns, baskets, and whispered stories. They came to stare. They came to remind themselves that whatever darkness haunted their own lives, at least they were not the creature bound beneath the ancient oak. Evelyn Hart stood at the very back of the crowd, her worn gray coat pulled tightly around her shoulders as the cold October wind swept through the trees. The forest smelled of damp earth and pine needles. Above the canopy, storm clouds swallowed the last traces of sunset. Another winter was coming. Another season she would face alone. Still alive, someone muttered nearby. I thought it would have disappeared by now. Maybe it deserves worse, another voice answered. Quiet laughter followed. Evelyn lowered her eyes. She never liked listening when people talked that way. The beast lifted its massive head. Heavy iron chains stretched from its thick neck to the roots of the oak. Even from 30 feet away, Evelyn could see the exhaustion in its movements. Its dark fur was matted from weeks of rain. One ear drooped slightly. Its breathing looked slow and uneven. Yet despite its size, despite the sharp claws and enormous frame, something about it felt strangely sad rather than frightening. The crowd always described it differently. A curse, a monster, a warning from the moon goddess. But standing there beneath the fading light, Evelyn saw something else. Loneliness. The realization made her chest tighten unexpectedly, maybe because she understood it too well. 3 months earlier, her mate Rejection had become the favorite gossip of her former pack. Friends stopped visiting. Invitations disappeared. Conversations ended when she entered a room. Eventually, staying became more painful than leaving. So she left. Now she lived alone in a small cabin nearly 2 miles beyond town, earning just enough by sewing torn jackets and repairing blankets. To survive. Most days, nobody spoke her name. The beast suddenly turned its head. Its pale silver eyes locked onto hers. Evelyn froze. The noise of the crowd seemed to fade away. For one strange heartbeat, it felt as though the enormous creature wasn't looking through her. It was looking at her, seeing her. The feeling unsettled her enough that she glanced away first. A child near the front stepped closer to the chains. His father quickly pulled him back. Stay away, the man warned. That thing isn't safe. The beast lowered its head again. It made no attempt to move toward anyone. No growl. No threat. Nothing. Just silence. Rain began to fall moments later, soft at first, then heavier. One by one, the townspeople turned toward home. Lantern lights disappeared into the darkness. Boots crunched over wet leaves. Voices faded among the trees. Within minutes, only the storm remained. Evelyn should have left too. Instead, she found herself staring at the empty clearing. The beast remained beneath the oak, unmoving as rain soaked its fur. No shelter, no warmth, no company. Abandoned again. She took a slow breath. Then another. Something deep inside her refused to let her walk away. Before she could change her mind, Evelyn stepped forward into the rain and took her first step toward the creature everyone else had left behind. The rain soaked through Evelyn Hart's coat within minutes. Cold drops slid from her hair and traced across her cheeks, but she barely noticed. Her attention remained fixed on the massive creature beneath the oak. Up close, it looked even larger than it had from the edge of the clearing. The chains wrapped around the ancient tree seemed impossibly small against its frame. Yet the beast made no effort to pull free. It simply lay there with its head lowered, rain dripping from its dark fur. Evelyn stopped several feet away. Her pulse quickened. Every sensible thought told her to leave. She was alone in the middle of Black Hollow Forest after dark. No one would know if something went wrong. No one would come looking for her. The realization should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, she found herself thinking about how long the creature must have been sitting there alone. The rain intensified. Wind rattled the branches overhead. The beast slowly opened its eyes. Silver. Not yellow. Not glowing red like the stories claimed. Just silver. Clear and strangely human. Evelyn swallowed. You look miserable, she whispered before she could stop herself. The words felt ridiculous the moment they left her mouth. She expected some reaction. A movement. A warning. Instead, the beast blinked once and continued watching her. The silence stretched between them. Evelyn glanced around the clearing. Everyone was gone. The lantern lights had vanished completely. Only darkness remained beyond the curtain of rain. Her gaze drifted toward a small wooden bucket near the oak. Someone had left it behind. Empty. She frowned. If people came here every evening, had no one thought to leave water? The answer came immediately. They did not care enough to try. Something inside her chest tightened again. It was the same feeling she remembered from the weeks after her rejection ceremony. The uncomfortable awareness that people could look directly at suffering and choose to walk away. Evelyn slowly removed the canvas satchel hanging from her shoulder. Inside was a loaf of bread she had purchased that morning and a small bottle of water meant to last her until tomorrow. She hesitated. Supplies cost money. Money was already scarce. Winter was approaching. Every dollar mattered. Then the beast lowered its head a little farther as though exhaustion itself had become too heavy to carry. Her decision was made. I suppose we are both terrible at making practical choices, she murmured softly. Kneeling near the bucket, she poured the remaining water inside. The sound echoed through the quiet clearing. The beast immediately lifted its head. Not aggressively, not eagerly, almost cautiously, as if it could not quite believe what it was seeing. Evelyn stepped back. There, she said. That is all I have. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the creature slowly rose onto its feet. The movement revealed how tired it truly was. It was not weakness exactly, more like the weight of something unseen pressing down on its shoulders. The chains shifted softly as it approached the bucket. Evelyn held her breath. The beast lowered its head and drank. Relief spread through her unexpectedly. It was such a simple thing. Water. Yet watching it felt important somehow. Meaningful. When it finished, the creature looked at her again. Rain fell between them in shimmering silver lines. Neither moved. Neither looked away. And for the first time since arriving in Black Hollow months ago, Evelyn no longer felt entirely alone. The storm followed Evelyn all the way home. By the time she reached her cabin, the hem of her skirt was soaked and her hands felt numb from the cold. Yet her thoughts remained in the clearing beneath the ancient oak. She could still see those silver eyes watching her through the rain. She could still remember the strange feeling that had settled over her when the beast drank the water she had offered. It had been such a small moment, but it lingered long after she pushed open her front door. The cabin greeted her with silence. A single lantern hung near the window. A stack of folded blankets rested beside the stone fireplace. Everything looked exactly as it had that morning. Simple, quiet, empty. Evelyn removed her wet coat and hung it near the fire. As warmth slowly returned to her fingers, she cut herself a small slice of bread and sat at the narrow wooden table. Normally, she enjoyed the peace of living alone. Tonight it felt different. The room seemed larger than usual. The silence heavier. Her eyes drifted toward the remaining loaf. She frowned. The beast had not eaten. At least not while she was there. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. The way it had hesitated before approaching the bucket. Not fearful exactly. More like it had forgotten what kindness looked like. Evelyn stared into the fire. "You are becoming ridiculous," she muttered to herself. Yet even as she said it, she was already reaching for her coat again. 20 minutes later, she stepped back into the rain carrying the rest of the bread wrapped carefully in cloth. The forest felt darker now. Wind whispered through the trees. Branches swayed overhead. Most people avoided Black Hollow after sunset, but Evelyn found herself walking faster rather than slower. The clearing appeared through the curtain of rain. For one terrible second, she thought the beast was gone. Then she spotted it beneath the oak, exactly where she had left it. Relief swept through her so suddenly that it surprised her. The creature raised its head as she approached. Silver eyes followed her every movement. "I brought this," she said softly. "It is not much." She knelt several feet away and placed the bread near the edge of the chain's reach. Then she stepped back. The beast remained motionless. Evelyn waited. Rain drummed softly against the leaves above. Finally, the creature rose and moved forward. Not hurriedly, not greedily, carefully, as though every movement had been measured. It lowered its head toward the bread. A moment later, it began to eat. Evelyn smiled despite herself. The expression felt unfamiliar. She had not smiled much these past few months. The beast finished and lifted its gaze toward her once more. Something changed in the air between them. The distance felt smaller somehow. Less like a frightened woman standing near a monster and more like two lonely souls sharing the same quiet evening. Then the creature surprised her. It slowly settled onto the ground and rested its massive head on its front paws. The posture looked almost peaceful, trusting. Evelyn's breath caught. For the first time, she noticed a deep weariness beneath its size and strength. Whatever burden this creature carried, it had carried it for a very long time. And somehow, standing there in the rain, she realized she wanted to return tomorrow. The next morning arrived wrapped in silver fog. Evelyn woke before sunrise, something she had not done willingly in months. For several moments, she lay beneath her blankets staring at the ceiling, annoyed with herself. She already knew what was happening. She was thinking about the beast again. The realization should have embarrassed her. Instead, she found herself hurrying through breakfast and gathering supplies before the sun fully cleared the horizon. By mid-morning, she was walking the familiar forest trail with a basket hanging from her arm. The air smelled cleaner after the storm. Drops of water clung to every branch, catching sunlight like scattered diamonds. As she approached the clearing, a strange nervousness settled in her stomach. What if the creature was gone? What if someone had moved it during the night? The thought bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Then she stepped through the trees and saw the enormous dark shape beneath the oak. Relief spread through her instantly. The beast was awake. In fact, it was already watching the path. Watching her. Evelyn slowed. "You knew I was coming," she said softly. The creature's ears lifted slightly. That was all. Yet something about the reaction made her smile. She placed the basket on the ground and began unpacking the contents. Fresh water, bread, a few apples. Nothing extraordinary. The kind of meal she would have prepared for any hungry traveler. The beast observed every movement carefully, not with the restless attention of an animal. With patience, awareness, understanding. That strange feeling returned. The unsettling suspicion that there was far more intelligence behind those silver eyes than anyone realized. As the days passed, a routine slowly formed between them. Evelyn visited every afternoon after finishing her sewing work. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she simply sat near the oak and talked. She told the creature about the changing weather, about the old widow who always complained about squirrels stealing birdseed, about the customers who never paid on time. The beast never answered. Yet somehow she never felt foolish speaking to it. It always listened, really listened. One afternoon she arrived carrying a book. She settled near the edge of the clearing and began reading aloud. The story was one her father had loved before he passed away years earlier. A simple tale about courage and second chances. As her voice drifted through the trees, she noticed the beast slowly lowering itself to the ground. Its eyes remained fixed on her the entire time. Not once did it appear distracted. Not once did it look away. By the end of the chapter, Evelyn realized she had forgotten she was speaking to a creature everyone feared. She felt as though she was sharing the story with an old friend. Then something unexpected happened. A rabbit darted from the underbrush near the oak. Startled, it froze beside the beast. Evelyn tensed automatically. The rabbit remained motionless for several seconds before cautiously hopping closer. The beast did not move, did not react. Eventually, the tiny animal settled beside one enormous paw as though it felt completely safe. Evelyn stared. The sight did not match any of the stories. Monsters did not attract frightened woodland creatures. Monsters did not listen quietly while someone read books beneath autumn trees. Monsters certainly did not spend entire afternoons gazing at a lonely omega as though she were the most important thing in the forest. And for the first time, Evelyn began to wonder whether the entire town had been wrong. The fox vanished into the underbrush the moment the voices reached the clearing. Evelyn slowly closed her book and stood. 3 men emerged from the trees carrying lanterns despite the fading afternoon light. She recognized all of them. Nathan Brewer owned the general store in town. Samuel Pierce worked at the lumber mill. The third man, Harold Vance, served on the local council. None of them looked pleased to see her. Nathan crossed his arms. "We have been looking for you." Evelyn glanced toward the beast. It remained beneath the oak, silent and watchful. "Why?" she asked. Harold stepped forward. "Because this has gone too far." The words settled heavily in the air. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. "I do not know what you mean." Samuel let out a short laugh. "Everybody knows what you have been doing out here." His gaze shifted toward the chained creature. "People have seen you bringing food, water, sitting here for hours. Evelyn resisted the urge to look away. So, Harold's expression hardened. So the council met this morning. The forest suddenly felt colder. Wind stirred the fallen leaves around their feet. And Evelyn asked quietly. Nathan answered this time. The chains are coming down tomorrow. Relief flashed through her for half a second before she realized he was not smiling. What does that mean? Nobody spoke immediately. The silence itself became an answer. Evelyn's pulse quickened. What does that mean? She repeated. Harold sighed as though explaining something obvious to a child. Winter is almost here. Nobody wants that thing sitting outside town for another season. The council decided it is time to end the problem. Evelyn stared at him. Her thoughts stumbled. Nothing about the creature over the past weeks matched the stories people told. It had never harmed anyone, never threatened anyone. Most days it barely moved at all. You cannot be serious. Samuel shook his head. You are blinded by pity. No, Evelyn said. I am paying attention. Harold's jaw tightened. You have spent too much time alone out here. Evelyn glanced toward the beast. Silver eyes met hers instantly. Watching, listening, understanding every word. The certainty struck her so strongly that she almost forgot the men standing nearby. Nathan lowered his voice. Look, Evelyn, we know life has not been easy for you. We know what happened after the rejection. But whatever comfort you think you found here, it is not real. The statement hurt more than she expected. Not because she believed him, because she knew exactly how easily people dismiss things they did not understand. Harold pointed toward the oak. That creature is dangerous. Evelyn looked at the beast again. The massive form remained perfectly still. A squirrel scampered along one of the roots without concern. Birds sang somewhere high above the clearing. Dangerous was not the word she would have chosen. Lonely was. Exhausted was. Forgotten was. The realization settled deep in her chest. You are wrong, she said softly. Harold shook his head. Tomorrow morning the council will be here. The three men turned toward the trail. Before leaving, Nathan paused. For a brief moment, sympathy softened his expression. Do yourself a favor, Evelyn. Do not come back tomorrow. Then they disappeared into the trees. Silence returned to the clearing. Evelyn remained standing long after their footsteps faded. Slowly she turned toward the beast. The creature had not moved. Yet something in those silver eyes seemed different now. More alert. More aware. As though it understood exactly what tomorrow would bring. And for the first time since she met it beneath the oak, fear settled into Evelyn's heart. That night, Evelyn barely slept. Wind brushed against the cabin walls while moonlight stretched across the floorboards. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the empty clearing and the promise Harold had made. By dawn, she had given up on rest entirely. She dressed quickly and stepped outside into the cold morning air. Frost silvered the grass. The forest stood silent beneath a pale sky. As she followed the familiar trail toward the oak, her heartbeat grew louder with every step. She told herself she was only going to say goodbye. She told herself there was nothing she could do to change the council's decision. Yet deep down she knew neither excuse was true. The moment the clearing came into view, relief and fear collided inside her chest. The beast was still there. It sat beneath the ancient oak exactly where she had left it the evening before. Its silver eyes found her immediately. Evelyn hurried forward. I came early, she whispered. I thought maybe. Her voice faded. She did not know how to finish the sentence. The beast slowly rose to its feet. Something felt different today. The air itself seemed heavier. The creature looked exhausted in a way she had never seen before, as though it had spent the entire night carrying an invisible burden. Evelyn placed a trembling hand against the rough bark of the oak and stared at the chains wrapped around it. For weeks, she had accepted them as part of the landscape. Now they seemed unbearably wrong. They are coming soon, she said quietly. The beast remained silent. Yet those silver eyes never left her face. A distant sound drifted through the trees. Voices. More than 3 this time. Evelyn stiffened. The council was arriving. She could hear footsteps approaching along the trail. Her stomach twisted. Every instinct urged her to step aside and let events unfold. After all, she was only one Omega. One forgotten woman living alone beyond town. What difference could she possibly make? Then she looked at the creature beneath the oak. She remembered the rainstorm. The first bucket of water. The rabbit, resting beside its paw. The fox drinking safely nearby. The afternoons spent reading stories while sunlight filtered through the leaves. Every memory carried the same truth. Everyone else had looked at this creature and seen a monster. She had looked closer. She had seen something worth saving. The voices grew louder. Shapes emerged between the trees. Harold, Nathan, Samuel. Several other townspeople followed behind them. Some carried tools. Others wore expressions filled with certainty. Evelyn felt fear rise inside her chest. Then something stronger rose beside it. Resolve. Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped directly in front of the beast. Gasps echoed from the edge of the clearing. Harold stopped walking. "Evelyn," he called. "Move aside." She shook her head. Her hands trembled, but she stood her ground. "No." The single word surprised even her. Samuel frowned. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Evelyn lifted her chin. The cold morning wind tugged at her hair. Behind her, she could feel the quiet presence of the creature she had come to know. Alone no longer. Forgotten no longer. "If you want him gone," she said softly, "then you will have to listen to me first." And for the first time since the crowd gathered around the oak weeks ago, every voice in the clearing fell silent. The first rays of dawn broke through the trees, spilling pale gold across the clearing. Evelyn shivered, not from the cold, but from the sudden stillness that enveloped everything. The beast beneath the oak shifted slightly, and then, impossibly, the massive form began to change. Its posture stretched upright, the thick dark fur receding, replaced by the form of a tall man standing in the filtered morning light. Silver eyes remained, now unmistakably human, reflecting the same intelligence and awareness they had held before. Evelyn gasped softly, her hand instinctively reaching toward her chest as though to steady her racing heartbeat. The forest seemed to hold its breath with her. The chains lay at his feet, empty and useless now. The man took a slow step toward her, his movements deliberate, and Evelyn could see the calm strength in his shoulders, the certainty in the way he held himself. Every motion spoke of authority, of power earned over years, yet there was something in his eyes that made her feel safe, seen, and understood. He stopped a few feet away and tilted his head slightly, studying her with quiet intensity. "You stayed," he said, his voice deep but not harsh, carrying a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the still morning air. "When everyone else left, you stayed." Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she could only nod, feeling a rush of warmth flood her chest despite the cool morning. The man stepped closer, and the clearing seemed to brighten, sunlight catching the edges of the frost-covered leaves and casting long, golden shadows. Evelyn noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere, as if the forest itself was acknowledging the moment. Birds began to chirp softly, and the rustling of the trees felt less like wind and more like a quiet exhalation. He reached out a hand, not toward her in command, but in recognition, a gesture that asked for trust as much as it offered it. Evelyn hesitated, then extended her own hand, feeling the surprising warmth and strength in his grasp. A silent understanding passed between them, a connection forged in solitude, patience, and the courage to stand where no one else had. The sun climbed higher, and with each inch of light, the man before her seemed to grow more vivid, more present, more real. Evelyn could feel it in every fiber of her being, the truth of his existence, the weight of his authority, and the significance of her own choices. At that moment, she knew that nothing in the forest, nothing in the town, nothing in the weeks of solitude or the acts of care she had given could be taken back. She had stayed, and in staying, she had witnessed something extraordinary. And as the first morning light washed over the clearing, the man who had once been a beast stepped fully into himself, and Evelyn realized, with a clarity that brought tears to her eyes, that destiny had finally arrived. For several seconds no one moved. The townspeople stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, their certainty shattered by the impossible sight. Before them, Harold Vance looked as though he had forgotten how to speak. Samuel Pierce stared openly. Even Nathan Brewer seemed unable to tear his gaze away from the man standing beside the ancient oak. The morning sun continued to rise, bathing the clearing in warm gold. Evelyn could still feel the steady pressure of his hand around hers. It grounded her in a moment that felt almost unreal. Then the man finally turned toward the crowd. The shift was subtle, yet immediate. Authority settled around him like a mantle. Not arrogance, not intimidation, simply the quiet certainty of someone born to lead. My name is Lucian Blackthorn, he said. His voice carried effortlessly across the clearing. A collective gasp followed. Every person present knew that name. The Alpha King had disappeared nearly a year earlier. Rumors had spread across every territory. Some claimed he had fallen to a curse. Others whispered he had abandoned the throne entirely. No one had known the truth. Until now. Harold's face drained of color. That is impossible, he whispered. Lucian's silver eyes settled on him calmly. And yet here I stand. Silence followed. The forest itself seemed to listen. Evelyn felt her heart racing. Alpha King. The title echoed through her thoughts. Every conversation, every story, every mystery suddenly fit together. The intelligence in those silver eyes. The quiet dignity beneath the loneliness. The feeling that she had never truly been speaking to a beast at all. Lucian turned back toward her. The hardness that had entered his expression vanished instantly. His gaze softened. Warmth returned. For months, he said quietly, people came here to stare, to judge, to walk away. Evelyn felt emotion tighten her throat. You were the only one who stayed. Tears blurred her vision. She lowered her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple truth of those words. She had never considered herself brave, never considered herself special. She had simply seen someone hurting and refused to leave. Lucian gently lifted her hand. Sunlight caught the silver of his eyes. You offered kindness when there was no reward. His voice lowered. You chose compassion when everyone else chose fear. The clearing remained silent. Nobody dared interrupt. In all my years, Lucian continued, I have never witnessed a greater strength. Evelyn's breath caught. The Alpha King stepped closer. Not as a ruler addressing a subject. Not as a king granting favor. As a man honoring someone who had changed his life. A faint golden glow appeared between them, soft as morning light. Gasps spread through the crowd. The air seemed to shimmer around Evelyn. She felt warmth spread through her chest, peaceful and comforting. Like sunlight after a long winter. Lucian smiled. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. The transformation was remarkable. The loneliness she had carried for months seemed to dissolve beneath that expression. The moon goddess does not make mistakes, he said softly. And neither did you. The warmth grew brighter. Around them, birds filled the forest with song. The ancient oak rustled gently overhead. Evelyn felt tears slip down her cheeks, but for the first time, they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of belonging, of recognition, of finally being seen. As the morning sun climbed higher above Black Hollow Forest, the forgotten Omega who had once believed she would spend her life alone stood beside the Alpha King. And in that moment, surrounded by light, she realized the greatest acts of courage are often the quietest ones. Sometimes destiny does not arrive through power or glory. Sometimes it begins with a single choice to stay when everyone else walks away.